Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Day 1 Araxxor guide for Old School RuneScape. Now, if you've been worried about Araxxor, maybe you've heard of its notorious reputation as being a very difficult boss when it first came out in RuneScape 3. Don't worry, this version of Araxxor is much, much easier, and although the Slayer level of 92 is pretty damn difficult to get, it's actually, I think, a little bit more on the easier side. I definitely think it's easier than something like Cerberus or even Alchemical Hydra, and you can definitely get your hands in here. You don't need that much as far as stats requirement or even skill. Now, as far as gear goes, you don't really need the most, crazy expensive gear to do this boss, but here's kind of just the setup that I've been running. The boss is weak to crush, so I've been using the Inquisitor set with an Abyssal Bludgeon. If you can't get an Abyssal Bludgeon, you can use something like the Dual Maquaddle. That's a pretty good option. I really like the Amulet of Blood Fury here just because the boss does do a little bit of chip damage, so just some nice healing to sustain that kind of goes a long way. A little bit more expensive, but I think it's worth it. And personally, I like to use the Light Bearer just to have specs every single kill. Sometimes I found that if I killed it too fast, I wouldn't always have a spec available. And of course, you're going to be using the Slayer helmet. This boss does require a Slayer task. And one quick tip that I would definitely advise is that you can actually go ahead and extend your Slayer task for Araxxyte at a Slayer Master. And this will significantly increase the amount that you're provided. I had 240 on my first task. Some people said that they were getting like 80 because they didn't extend it. So I would definitely bring that. If you have something like a Scythe, obviously that's probably going to be the best. So, just use that. Now, speaking of specs, I do also bring an Elder Maul along. Even though this boss's defense isn't that high, I just find it's nice to use one spec, and also because it has such a high melee strength, it's also useful for one-shotting the ads, which we'll get into in just a little bit. For the rest of the inventory, I just bring some super combat potions, an anti-venom or extended anti-venom, which you get the material for from the boss. I bring 1 or 2 stamina potions just in case, I'm running out, some food, and some prayer pots. You can bring brews and super restores if you want. It just kind of depends on how long you want your trips to go, but honestly, it's probably fine to just bring food. And the boss also does drop some food and some prayer potions, so you could really extend your trips a little bit more that way. Finally, I bring a rune pouch with vengeance runes. You don't necessarily need this. You can also bring thralls, or you could bring runes, do spellbook swap into thralls, and then do both. But I think vengeance is just fine. It's pretty simple to use, and we'll talk about how to actually time your vengeance properly to avoid damage. We'll get into that with the mechanics. Now, this teleport that I have is called a Spider Cave teleport. This brings you right here to the Araxxor cave, so you can actually go ahead and start. If you don't have access to that, or you just want to save money because they are quite expensive right now, I would recommend using the Hollowed Sepulchre teleport, and you can use this shortcut. You just have to buy like 2 long ropes, which come from the general store. They're like 50k each. So if you've done Sepulchre and you have a couple of extra teleports there, I would recommend using this. Otherwise, you could use like this fairy ring to get there. You could use Port Phasmatis with the Ectophile and just run down. Or if you don't care, use Spider Cave teleport. But again, they are quite expensive because it is day 1. So you might want to consider selling those instead when you do get them. Once inside, you can go ahead and ignore the little ads. It's not really what we're here to do. And head over into the boss itself. Okay, so the basic mechanic of Araxxor is that it will melee you when you're in melee range, and it will mage you when you're far away. You have to already be praying the correct prayer before the animation starts. You can't react to a mage hit. So I would just highly recommend to always kind of keep it in melee range as opposed to running away all over the place. Marking the true tile of Araxxor using something like Better NPC Highlight really helps a lot here, as you can only see kind of where its range is. And when you do need to move the boss, you kind of want to keep it on something of a leash. That way you're not going too far away. It does catch up to you pretty fast. Just make sure you're kind of leashing it and keeping it in your kind of melee distance. This allows you to pray melee for pretty much the entire fight and not take very much damage outside of a little bit of chip. Araxxor has 3 specials for you to deal with, but it will only use 1 special per fight. Basically, it will choose a special, and that is going to be the special it uses for the rest of that fight. This means once you've seen the special, that's the only thing you really need to focus on for the rest of the fight. Pretty easy. Araxxor can shoot a fireball, which will target whatever compass direction you are closest to. This has a small AoE as it travels, so make sure to move 2 tiles away. It also leaves some acid puddles, which you'll have to deal with for the rest of the fight. Next special is Acid Splatter. This will just splatter a whole bunch of acid puddles for you to dodge. And finally, Acid Rain. This special will send an unavoidable ball of acid at you, and for the next 5 tiles that you move, will drop a puddle on the ground. Easiest way to deal with this is to simply walk it out for a couple tiles. You can use Control Click to force yourself to walk, or if you want to maximize DPS, you can walk inside of the boss, attack the boss, walk inside the boss, and do that. That way you're not losing any damage ticks. You can also just damage, while taking the acid. It's only 5 damage, so it's really not too bad. Just don't eat the entire thing. Make sure you're kind of staying moving as much as you can. Now, I mentioned that Araxxor will only choose 1 of these specials per encounter. And you can actually predict this by just looking at what the first egg is, which is immediately to your left when you enter, when the fight begins. If it's a green egg and the first spider will be green, it's going to be a fireball. If the first egg is white, it's going to be the acid splatter. And if it's red, it's going to be acid rain. Don't worry though, you really don't need to memorize this. You can also just look at what the first special is, and there you go. That's the special you need to deal with for that fight. Speaking of the spiders, they will spawn throughout the fight. Araxxor will do 3 attacks, spawn a spider, 3 attacks, do a special, and then back and forth, back and forth. The green acidic spider will simply attack you from ranged. If you're using a crushed-based weapon, this will always deal your max hit, allowing you to one-shot it with proper gear and setup. They also explode on death, leaving behind some acid puddles, so when you do kill them, make sure you move away. You can also use any kind of heavy ammunition range weapon, something like a heavy ballista, but I personally found that simply attacking them with a melee weapon, especially if you have the ability to one-shot them, like I'm swapping to the Elder Maul, I found that to be just the simplest way to do it. You can also choose to just tank the damage throughout the fight. It's pretty inconsequential. But again, if you can one-shot it, why not just, avoid taking that damage altogether? And be careful that you're not taking a mage hit from Araxxor when you do go to attack the spider. So I like to kind of walk Araxxor over to the green spider first, then go kill it, and then get back onto Araxxor. The red spiders explode on proximity. Simply wait for them to get close to you, bait the explosion, and then move away when they're 1 tile away from you. The explosion also does damage to Araxxor, and you can get a max hit of 80 from this explosion if it is at least touching the inside of Araxxor. So what I like to do is stand on the other side of the red egg, and this will automatically make the red spider kind of walk through Araxxor and explode inside of its model. Finally, the white mirrorbacks, the most tricky ones. These guys will reflect some of the damage back at you and also reduce your damage done to the boss, as they'll take a percentage of that damage. However, you can reflect damage back at them by timing a proper vengeance. Just like with the green acidic spiders, a crush-based weapon will always deal your max hit, allowing you to pretty efficiently one-shot these if you have a good crush weapon. The timing here is a little bit tricky, but what you want to be doing is waiting for Araxxor to hit you first, and then using Vengeance and attacking the spider. This is so that you avoid accidentally proccing your Vengeance off of one of Araxxor's melee damage. It does do a little bit of chip, and you definitely don't want to be reflecting, 2 damage when you're going to be taking almost 30 when you kill the white spider. Takes a little bit of practice to get this right, and you might have to lose a little bit of damage on the boss, but I definitely think it's worth it to kind of get the hang of how to time this vengeance properly, as you do end up taking a lot less damage. Now, initially, the idea of Araxxor was to balance, killing the eggs early versus simply dealing with all the spiders. But honestly, guys, these spiders are really, really not hard at all, and the red ones actually are a huge, DPS bonus, so I wouldn't even bother killing the eggs. I don't think it's necessary at all. If you're really, really struggling, you might want to kill off the white eggs, but I would just try to practice and get familiar with it. It really does kind of speed up kills, not having to deal with the eggs at all. At 25%, Araxxor will hit its Enrage Phase, which has a little animation tied to it. At this point, simply move 2 tiles every time it targets you for an attack, which you can see when it says scree or it raises its legs. If you run out of space moving around the boss, you can also step 1 tile back. Just be careful that you wait for the boss to kind of get closer, so you don't accidentally step back into the acid puddles it just left. If you move too far away, it will still do a mage attack, so just make sure you're not running all over the place. Stay close to the boss, don't go running all over the place, and if you need to move 1 tile back, just make sure that the boss moves first. Spiders will continue to spawn, but you really don't need to worry about them at this point. Since Araxxor is no longer doing melee attacks, you can just go ahead and pray ranged for the green spiders, which negates their damage. Continue to avoid the red spiders and try to explode them next to Araxxor to get that explosion damage. And as for the white mirrorback spiders, you can actually kind of ignore these in the Enrage Phase, as Araxxor's Stomp will actually deal damage to the white spiders and kill it for you. Thanks, Araxxor. I find it a lot easier to just let Araxxor cleave it as opposed to, dealing with like Vengeance or anything like that, just because, movement's a little bit tighter here and there is a lot of damage going out if you do make a mistake. Keep damaging the boss and it will die in no time. All right, so I'm just going to do 1 full kill, kind of documented. Again, when you harvest Araxxor, you will get the loot, and then it'll respawn in like 5 seconds. So you basically, when you're ready to go, chill. We start with the Elder Maul spec. Go ahead and pray. I have 100%, so I'll go ahead and use 2 specs here. If you have something like Burning Claws or like a Void Waker, I've heard that those are also pretty good. Yeah, go ahead and dump the specs, and just take notice of what the first one is. It's green, so I'm going to want to move over there just to kind of kill it. I'll start moving, bring it over. Wait to take the melee hit, then come back, go ahead and hit this one, swap back to the bludgeon. Again, we're using Elder Mole so we can one-shot the green one. Now, I know that because it's a green one, it's going to be a fireball, but even if you didn't know it, right, you just basically just react to whatever special. And now that we've seen that it's fireball, for the rest of this fight, it's going to be a fireball special every single time. What's next is going to be the white egg, so let's get ready for the Venge. Again, I'm going to go ahead and wait. Take the hit from the Araxxor, walk up, Venge it, it's dead. You can probably do this with without Elder Mole. I should with Elder Mole. I think my Abyssal Bludgeon was like 1 short, so yeah. Got Fireball Spec, we just dodge it. I think with the Fireball Spec, it's good to just always stay on your toes. If you're just always moving, you're kind of fine. Next up, we got this red spider spawning. So again, we're trying to position on the other side of the boss. That way the spider paths through it and explodes. I always want to make sure that it's kind of exploding on the inside, so we're getting that max damage. And we move when it's 1 tile away. I was a little slow there. I took 7 damage. Not a big deal. Dodge the Fireball Special. Next thing is a green one. So what we can go ahead and do here is either just start dragging it over or just tank the last one because it's already close to dead anyways. I'm just going to go ahead and drag it over. Actually, we're close enough that I can just go ahead, push it. Pretty range now, and I don't really have to worry about this. And hit Scree, we move. Hit Scree, we move. You just keep going like this. Hit the corner, go. You just want to make sure you're not going too early. Praying range the whole time. You will take a lot of damage if you get hit by the attack, so just be careful. And boss is dead. Super simple. That's Araxxor. Hope you guys have fun with this new boss. I really do think it's pretty shockingly easy, so you can kind of get your hands on there. Even if you're not too confident with bossing, I think it's actually like a relatively good step up over a boss like Scurious or something like that. So it really rewards good movement. Like, I think it's a fun boss. It's just definitely on the easy side. So give it a shot, guys. Good luck with the drops. And hopefully this video helped you get some kills, get some more consistent trips, and get some longer trips too. Because I do think that a lot of this boss, kind of the skill comes in doing longer trips and taking less damage. You know, not getting hit by little mechanics, not taking the chip damage, things like that. Good luck, and I'll see you guys in the next video.